Welcome back to Inside the Philippines. If you're new here, this is the channel where we sit down with the men and women who went looking for a second life in these islands, and we let them tell you the truth about what they found. The whole of it. The warm mornings and the family dinners, and the part they don't say out loud at the pub back home. Before we start, do us a favor. Drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from tonight. We've got people listening from Sydney to Saskatchewan, and it means more than you know. If you've got a story of your own, share it below. And if these stories are worth something to you, like the video and subscribe, because it helps us keep finding the people brave enough to tell them. Tonight you're going to meet Trevor. He's 67 years old, from a small village outside Truro, down in Cornwall, right at the toe of England. He spent 40 years as a refrigeration and air conditioning engineer, the kind of man who fixed the cold rooms in the supermarkets and the units on the fishing boats, who checked every pressure twice before he signed a job off. A careful man, a quiet man, the sort who measures the timber, then measures it again before he cuts. And that's what makes his story sit so heavy. Because for all the measuring he did in his life, there was one thing he never checked. One set of numbers he took on faith. It started with a photograph on a screen, on a wet Cornish evening when the house was too quiet. It ended with a concrete house going up on the other side of the world, built with his money, on land that could never be his. We're not going to tell you how it turns out. That's his to tell. Here's his story, in his own words. The house went quiet on a Tuesday. That's the thing nobody warns you about. Not the funeral. You get through the funeral. The quiet. Susan was ill for 4 years before she went. Motor neurone, they called it in the end, though it took them long enough to say the words. 4 years of me learning how to lift a grown woman, how to work a feeding tube, how to sleep with one ear open. You'd think, when it's finally over, you'd feel some relief. People even told me I would. They meant it kind. But when the district nurse packed up her bag for the last time, and the hire company came for the bed, I stood in the front room, and I could hear the fridge humming from the kitchen. 40 years I fixed those things, and I'd never once just stood and listened to one. That hum was the loudest thing in the house. We never had children. That was a thing between us we made our peace with long ago, but it meant that when she was gone, there was no one. My brother's up in Plymouth, and we speak at Christmas. I had my workmates, but you retire, and they turn out to be colleagues, not friends. You find that out quick. I had the allotment, I had the rugby on a Saturday, and a pint at the Heron, though I'd sit there half the time and not say a word to a soul. I want to be honest with you, because there's no point telling you this if I dress it up. I was lonely in a way I didn't have the words for. 66 years old, a decent pension, a paid-off house near Truro, my health, more or less. On paper, I was doing fine. And I'd sit in that kitchen with the fridge humming and think, is this it then? Is this the last 20 years? Just me and the hum. It was Gordon who put the idea in my head, though he'd deny it now. Gordon from the allotment, 3 plots down, grows marrows the size of a Labrador. He'd married a lady from Cebu 15 years back, and she was lovely, always sending him off with lumpia, and telling me I was too thin. And Gordon says to me one afternoon over the runner beans, he says, "Trev, you don't have to sit and rot. There's warm-hearted women out there who'd have you. Family women. You just have to look somewhere other than the Heron." I laughed at him. Course I did. Thought it was daft. Thought it was the sort of thing sad old men do, buying a wife off the internet. And I wasn't going to be that. I told him so. He just shrugged and handed me a marrow. But it got in. These things get in, don't they? I'd be lying in bed on Susan's side because I still couldn't lie on my own. And I'd think about what he said. Family women, somewhere warm. I'd nursed a dying woman for 4 years, and I think part of me just wanted to be useful to someone again. To have someone need me for something other than my absence. So, one night in November, and I remember it was proper Cornish weather, rain coming in sideways off the sea, I made myself a cup of tea, and I opened the laptop and I typed in the name of the site Gordon had mentioned, Filipino Cupid. I felt a fool doing it. Genuinely. My hands were a bit shaky over the keys, like I was up to something I shouldn't be. I nearly closed it 3 times. I put up 2 photos, one of me at Gordon's daughter's wedding in a decent suit, and one of me on the boat off Falmouth holding a mackerel like an idiot. I wrote a little bit about myself. Widower, retired engineer. Said I was honest and I kept my word, and I could fix anything with a plug on it. Didn't know what else to say. I nearly wrote that I was lonely, but I deleted it. Some pride left in me then. Within an hour I had 11 messages. Now, I'm not a vain man. I know what I look like. 66, gone soft round the middle, ears like a taxi with both doors open, as my old foreman used to say. So 11 messages, most from women 30 years younger. And the engineer in me went, hang on. That doesn't add up. Those numbers are wrong. I remember thinking exactly that. The pressures are off. And do you know what I did with that thought? I ignored it. A man who'd spent 40 years trusting the gauge over the good feeling. And the one time it mattered, I looked at a reading I didn't like, and I decided the gauge was broken. Most of them, I didn't answer. Too quick. Too much. One asking for my WhatsApp, before she'd said hello. But there was one that was different. 3 lines. She said she liked that I still went out on the water at my age, that her own father had been a fisherman before he passed, and that I had a kind face for a man holding a dead fish. She signed it with her name. Rowena. From a town called Ormoc, on an island I'd never heard of called Leyte. I read it maybe 4 times. Then I made another tea and stood in the kitchen, and for the first time in a long while, the fridge wasn't the loudest thing in the room. I typed back 1 line. Just, hello, Rowena. Thank you. It was a rubbish fish, anyway. She replied before I'd finished my tea. I didn't know it yet, but I'd just started the most expensive conversation of my life. She was quick. That was the first thing. I'd send a message before bed, gone 11 my time, and by the time I woke, there'd be 3 back, because she was 7 hours ahead, and her day was starting as mine ended. I liked that. There was a rhythm to it. I'd wake to good morning, Trevor. Did you sleep? Don't forget your breakfast. And I hadn't had anyone ask me if I'd eaten in a very long time. Her English was good. Better than mine some days, and she'd tease me about my spelling. She was 41. She had a daughter, Angel, who was 15 and clever, and wanted to be a nurse, and Rowena would send me the girls' report cards like I was family. All these grades I didn't understand. 91, 93, and I'd say well done to a child I'd never met. The calls became the shape of my day. I'd get up, do the allotment, come back, and there she'd be, waiting, and I'd prop the phone against the fruit bowl and cook my bit of dinner while she cooked hers, 7 hours ahead. 2 of us in 2 kitchens on 2 sides of the planet, chopping onions and pretending it was ordinary. She'd show me the market hall, hold up a fish by the tail. This one is for you, Trevor. And I'd show her the marrows Gordon kept forcing on me, and she'd laugh. What is that? Is that a vegetable or a weapon? Daft little things. I'd not laughed like that in years. I told her about Susan, all of it, and she listened, properly listened. didn't rush me off it. And afterward, she said her own grief had taught her that you don't get over people, you just build the day around the hole they leave. I thought that was about the wisest thing anyone had said to me since the funeral. I wrote it on the pad by the phone. I've still got it somewhere. She told me she was a widow. Her husband, she said, had died years back, a fishing accident, same as her father. And that was why the photo of me on the boat had caught her. She said it plain and sad, and I had no reason on God's earth to doubt it. Why would I? You don't meet someone and think, I'll just check whether your dead husband's actually dead. I want to stop there a second, because that word, widow, that's the whole thing, really. That's the thread the whole business hangs from. But I didn't know that. To me, it was just a sad fact about a woman who understood loss the way I did. Two people who'd buried someone and were rattling round in the space they left. We moved off the site and onto Messenger, then video calls. And she was real. That's what I need you to understand. This wasn't some voice that wouldn't show its face. She'd call me from her little house, concrete walls, a rooster going off somewhere behind her, kids shouting in the street, and she'd walk me round the place with the phone, show me the sorry store on the corner, her mother in a house dress waving shy at the camera. Nay, she called her. Say hi to Trevor, Nay. It felt like being let into a life. The first money was small. I want to be truthful about how it goes, because it never comes at you as a big number. It comes as a small kindness you'd be a monster to refuse. Angel needed load for her phone for online school. 150 pesos. 2 quid. I sent it through the Gcash thing Rowena set up on my phone, and the thank you video of the girl waving, you'd have thought I'd paid for the moon. 2 quid, and I felt useful. God help me, I felt useful. Then it was a bit for the fiesta in their barangay. Everyone chips in. Then her mother's blood pressure tablets from the mercury drug, 800 pesos, about 11 pound. Then Angel's school shoes, because the old ones had gone through at the toe, and you can't send a girl to school shamed. Then a bit toward the electric before they got cut off. And Rowena was so embarrassed asking, kept saying she'd pay it back out of her carinderia wages. And I said, don't be daft. It's a few quid. And I meant it. It was a few quid. That's the thing. Every single one of them, on its own, was an amount I'd not think twice about spending on a round at the Heron. Each one, nothing. Each one a thing any decent man would do. And each one, I see now, was a slow test of the joint. You pressure test a system gradual. Bring it up bit by bit and watch for the leak. I know how it's done. I've done it 1,000 times to a refrigeration line. I just never once thought I was the line being tested. By the spring, I'd booked a flight. Hadn't been further than Tenerife in 20 years, and here I was, on the Emirates website at midnight, booking Heathrow to Dubai to Cebu, best part of 1,100 pound because I paid for the extra legroom, my knees being what they are. Rowena cried when I told her, said she never thought a good man would really come, said she'd been let down before, and I sat in my kitchen in Cornwall feeling 10 feet tall. I flew out in April, 21 hours, and I didn't sleep a wink of it. Partly nerves, partly the fella next to me who snored like one of my old compressors. Came down into Cebu, and the heat hit me walking off the plane like opening an oven. That wet heat, jet fuel and something sweet underneath it, frangipani maybe. And there she was past the barrier, smaller than I'd thought, in a yellow dress, holding a little sign with my name on it spelled wrong. Trevor. I've thought about that moment more than any other. Because it was real. Whatever came after, that hug in the Mactan airport was real. I'd stake my life on it. She was shaking, and so was I. Two lonely people who'd finally put their arms round something solid. We had a day and a bit in Cebu first, and I'll admit the city knocked me sideways. I'd pictured, I don't know, palm trees and quiet. Cebu's not quiet. It's jeepneys, nose to tail, belching diesel. 100 of them, all painted up like fairground rides with names on the front. And the noise, the horns, the heat, coming off the road in a wobble. She took me down Colon Street, oldest street in the country, she said, proud of it. And we ate at a Jollibee because she wanted me to try it. This red bee cartoon everywhere, and I had the fried chicken they call Chicken Joy, and a spaghetti that was, I'll be honest, sweet as pudding. And she watched my face the whole time to see if I liked it. I said it was grand. It was a bit strange, but I said it was grand, and it made her happy. And that was worth more than the chicken. We walked round the Ayala Mall in the cool of the aircon, and she didn't ask me for one thing. Not one, just held my hand past the shops. And I remember thinking, this isn't a woman after my money. Look at her. She's not even looking in the windows. That's the sort of evidence I was gathering. That's the standard of proof I was working to. A woman not looking in a shop window. A night in a pension house near the Ayala Mall. Separate rooms, she insisted. Very proper. Very Catholic. And I respected that. Liked it, even. Then the fast ferry from Cebu Pier over to Ormoc, couple of hours across water so bright it hurt to look at. And her whole family waiting on the dock, like I was somebody. The mother, nay Elena, a brother, Jomar, who drove a habal, one of those motorbike taxis, shook my hand with both of his. Uncles, so many uncles, Tito Boy and Tito Nonoy, and a couple more I never got straight, all grins, all cracking the San Miguel at 11 in the morning. They took me out to the barangay outside town, dirt road off the National Highway, a series bus roaring past, kicking up dust. And there was a welcome laid on. A roast pig. Karaoke set up in the yard. The whole street watching the Kano who'd come for Rowena. I sat with a warm beer in my hand and a paper plate of lechon on my knee, and Angel, shy as anything, showed me her nursing textbooks. And I looked round at all these faces, all this warmth, this noise, this life, and after a year of a house that only hummed, I thought, I've found it. Whatever this is, I've found it. That night went on till God knows when. The karaoke machine, one of those Magic Sing microphones, got passed round the whole street, and every one of them could sing, properly sing, and then they handed it to me, and the whole yard went quiet and grinning, waiting for the Kano to make a fool of himself. I did my way, because it's the only one I halfway know, and I later learned that's the one song you're not meant to do out there. People have been stabbed over my way. There's a whole thing about it, but nobody stabbed me. They cheered like I'd won something, and Rowena had her hand over her mouth laughing and her eyes shining, and Tito Boy thumped me on the back so hard I nearly went in the pig. I sat back down sweating, heart going, and Nay Elena leaned over and patted my knee, and said something in their language, Waré, and Rowena translated it as, my mother says, you have a good heart. She can see it. I believed her. I wanted so badly to be a man with a good heart that someone could see, after 4 years of bedpans and no one seeing anything at all, that I'd have believed nearly anything said kindly in a language I couldn't check. I paid for that pig, by the way. And the beer, and the sound system hire. Found that out later. But that day, I'd have paid for it 10 times over and thanked them for the privilege. That's not them robbing me. That's me, wanting so badly to belong somewhere that I never once asked what it cost. By the time I flew home 3 weeks later, I'd spent the thick end of £9,000, all in. Flights, the gifts, the pasalubong bags Rowena helped me pack for everyone, a nice watch for Jomar, a phone for Angel, And I'd have told you, hand on heart, that it was the best money I ever spent. That's how it goes, though I hate that word get you, because it wasn't a trick that first trip. It was just the beginning of a story I was writing in my own head and paying to keep going. I flew back to Ormoc a second time that summer, and by then it had stopped being a holiday, and started being a life I was funding from 3,000 miles away. The monthly thing started without either of us quite deciding it. Rowena worked, on and off, helping at a cousin's little eatery, a carinderia, for next to nothing. Her mother didn't work. Angel was in school, and there were always these gaps, these shortfalls. And one month I just said, look, let me put something in every month so you're not scrambling. Send me the number. We settled on 28,000 pesos a month, about £400. Now, in Cornwall, £400 is a fortnight's shop, and the odd meal out. In the barangay, it was a fortune. It was more than Jomar brought home in 2 months on the habal-habal, and I knew that, and if I'm honest, that was part of why it felt good. To be the man who could fix the whole family's month with one tap on the phone. 28 grand of pesos, every month. Standing order of the heart. And I understood the why of it better once I was there. There's a thing they've got, and I'm not mocking it, I came to half believe in it myself. Utang na loob, they call it. Debt of gratitude. You do right by family. Family does right by you, and the circle never closes. It just keeps turning. When Rowena's mother took me in and cooked for me, I owed her. When I sent money, they owed me. It's not a con. It's how the whole place holds together when there's no state to catch you if you fall. The trouble is, I wasn't holding a bit of it up. I was holding all of it up. And a system where all the weight is on one joint, I could have told you exactly how that ends. I fixed that failure for a living. That second trip I stopped 6 weeks, and I started to see how the day actually ran out there, past the welcome. Up at 4 with the roosters, whether you like it or not, and there's no arguing with a rooster. Nay, Elena sweeping the yard in the half-dark. The series bus grinding past on the highway before dawn, full of people going into Ormoc for the market. Jomar off on the habal-habal, ferrying school kids and old ladies with their shopping, coming back with his 200, 300 pesos, proud of it, and rightly. I'd walk down to the sari-sari on the corner for my morning bottle of Coke in the little plastic bag with a straw, because that's how they sell it, and the woman who ran it, Manang Ising, would have it ready before I asked. I liked it. I want to be honest that I liked it. The slowness, the way everyone knew everyone, the way a place like that folds a lonely man in. It was the opposite of a granite house that only hummed. It felt like the antidote to the exact thing that had been killing me. And the family were good to me. I keep coming back to that, because the easy version of this story leaves it out. They fed me, they minded me, they were made up when I turned up and sad when I left. Angel started calling me Tito Trevor and showing me her homework, and I helped her with the maths, which she was quick at, quicker than me, and I found I looked forward to it. I wasn't buying a family. That's what I told myself, and I still half think it's true. It was that they let me be family. And then, slow, the being family started to have a price, and by the time I could see the price, I was too far in to want to read it. The first big one came in the September. Rowena rang me, no video, just her voice, and she was crying so hard I could barely make it out. Her mother had collapsed. A stroke. They'd got her to the hospital in Ormoc, but you have to understand how it works out there. There's no just turning up. You pay before they treat. You buy the medicines yourself from the pharmacy across the road and carry them in. You pay a deposit before they'll even admit her proper. She needed Rowena said between the sobbing. About 140,000 pesos to be safe. 2,000 pound. I didn't hesitate. Not for a second. What was I going to do? Ask for an itemized quote, while the woman's having a stroke. I sent it within the hour through a Palawan Express branch Jomar walked to. And nay, Elena pulled through, she really did. And when I next saw her, she held my face in both her hands and cried and called me anak, son. And I tell you, I felt that in my chest. Here's the part one chew on. I've no doubt the stroke was real. I met the woman after, one side of her face still a bit slack. That happened. But I never saw a single receipt. And when I once, gently, asked how much the hospital had actually cost in the end, the whole room went quiet, and Rowena looked hurt, and Tito Boy changed the subject to the fishing, and I felt like a heel for asking. That's the thing, and it's not even cruel. It's just how it is out there. You don't talk money at the table. You don't make someone lose face. So the real number and the number I sent, I'll never know if they were the same. I only know I stopped asking. Asking cost me more, in that room, than the money did. There was a second scare that winter, her pressure again, another 40-odd thousand pesos. And Jomar came off his bike on the wet highway and cracked his collarbone and lost a fortnight's work. And I covered that too. And the physio, because how do you not? All told, the medical that year must have been the guts of 8,000 pound. And every penny of it I gave freely and would give again, because some of it, maybe most of it, was real need, and I had it, and they didn't. That's not the part 1,000 ashamed of. The part 1,000 ashamed of is what I let it turn into, because somewhere in there, being the man who saved the mother, the man who mended the brother, I started to feel like I'd bought my way into being needed. And a needed man doesn't ask awkward questions. He can't afford to. He might get told he's not needed after all. It was on the second trip, sat in the yard with the uncles, San Miguel going warm in my hand, that the house first came up. Not from Rowena, from Tito Nonoy, casual as anything. He said, "Trevor, you can't keep staying in the little house with all of us cheek by jowl. A man like you needs his own place." And everyone nodded, and Rowena looked at her feet all shy, and someone said, "Aye, if only," and let it hang there. A house. Our own house. Somewhere I could stop the 6 months a year I was already dreaming about. Somewhere Rowena and Angel could live proper. Off the dirt, concrete walls, a real toilet, maybe a little veranda where I could sit of an evening with a beer and watch the light go. I could see it. God, I could see it clear as anything. There was a fella I'd met by then, an Aussie, Dave, ran a little dive place down the coast, been out there 20 years, and when I mentioned the house idea over a beer in Ormoc, he put his bottle down and looked at me dead serious. He said, "Mate, whose name's the land in?" And I said, "Well, the family's, the mother's, I suppose." And he said, "You cannot own land here. Not you, not any foreigner, not ever. You build on their land, you've built them a house. You want it done, you do it with your eyes open, and you never put in a peso you can't afford to kiss goodbye." I heard him. I want to be clear. I heard every word. He wasn't wrong, and he didn't say it to be cruel. But I'd just watched Rowena hold her mother's slack face and cry. I'd been called son by a woman who nearly died, and I thought, Dave's a good bloke, but he's gone bitter out here. They all go bitter, and this isn't that. This is family. My family. So I looked at the reading on the gauge, plain as day. Foreigner cannot own the land. And I did the one thing 40 years of engineering had taught me never to do. I decided the gauge was wrong. The build started the following January. I'd sold the granite house by then. That's the bit I skated past, isn't it? but it's the bit that matters. I'd put the Cornwall house on the market that autumn. Our house, 30-odd years of our life. And it went for a good price to a couple from London who wanted a bolt hole. And I stood in the empty hall with the keys in my hand, and I didn't cry. And I've wondered since whether I should have. All of it, the house and the savings and the let flat cashed in, came to around £260,000, about $330,000, if you talk in the American way half the internet does. My whole life converted into a number on a bank screen. I moved most of it into an account I could reach from out there, and I told myself I was being sensible, keeping it liquid. The house they built me, well, built us, that's how I thought of it, was a concrete block bungalow on a corner of the family land, up a bit from the mother's place. Now I know construction. Different trade, same discipline. And I'll tell you, a provincial build out there is a slow, leaky business. There's no fixed price. There's a cousin who knows construction, Kuya Boboy. And there's a plan drawn on the back of a feed sack. And then there's you, wiring money in tranches whenever the cement runs out. And the cement always runs out. Prices went up mid-build. The peso did something. They needed to pour the columns deeper for the storms. Could we add a second CR? Could we run it up half a story for when Angel marries? Every ask reasonable. Every ask another 60, 80, 100,000 pesos on the phone. And here's the mad thing. I loved it. I flew out for stretches during the build, and I'd be up there at 7 in the morning in my old work boots, watching them mix the concrete by hand on a sheet of ply, shovel and shovel, no mixer. The boys hauling hollow blocks up a bamboo scaffold that would have given a British site foreman a heart attack. I couldn't help myself. I got stuck in, checking the levels, fussing over whether the CR would drain right, because a badly fallen pipe will haunt you for 20 years, and I've unblocked enough of them to know. Kuya Boboy would nod along and agree with everything I said, and then do it however he'd already decided. And I'd let him, because it was his country, and his way, and who was I? For a few weeks there, I felt like a man with a purpose again, a project, something rising out of the ground with my name on it. Except it didn't have my name on it. That was the one measurement I never took. I checked the fall on the drain pipe, and I never once checked whose name was on the title, and if that isn't the whole of me in one sentence, I don't know what is. By the time it had a roof and tiles and a coat of that pale green paint Rowena chose, I'd put in around 3.6 million pesos, £50,000, on a house I could never own, on land in a woman's name that wasn't even Rowena's, it was her mother's. And I knew that. Dave had told me that. And I did it anyway with my eyes wide open and my heart doing the arithmetic instead of my head. And it didn't stop at the house. Once you've built the house, you have to fill it. I'm a fridge man, so of course I bought a proper big 2-door fridge and a split aircon for the bedroom and a telly and furniture from the Gaisano in town. Then Jomar's Habal was on its last legs, and how's the man to work? So a new motorbike, 90,000 pesos. Then the Sari store, because Rowena needed something of her own, an income. So we stocked out a little shop at the front of the house, shelves of shampoo sachets and San Miguel, and load a couple 100,000 pesos to set up. Then Tito Boy had the idea of a piggery out the back, 6 sows to start, real money in pigs, he said. And I put 400,000 pesos into concrete pens and feed and stock. A business. 2 businesses. I was going to be a Cornish pig farmer by proxy in the tropics. You have to laugh. And underneath all of it, the steady drip never stopped. The monthly, the fiesta every few months, and there's always a fiesta, and the Canos expected to sponsor it. Christmas which out there is basically September to January. Little top-ups on the Gcash, 5,000 here, 10,000 there. So constant, I stopped clocking them. Add all that up over the 2 years, the furnishings and the bike and the fiestas and the endless Gcash, and it's another £22,000, gone in dribs I never felt leave. But I was happy. I need you to know that, because it's not all misery, and it'd be a lie to pretend it was. I'd sit on that veranda in the evening with a cold San Miguel, roosters going, karaoke drifting over from 3 houses down, Angel doing her homework at the table, Rowena laughing with her sister in the kitchen, and I felt part of something for the first time since Susan. I'd have paid every penny just for those evenings. I nearly say that to myself like it makes it all right. It doesn't. But it was true. So of course I asked her to marry me. On the veranda, no less. Got a ring from the jeweler in the mall. Went down on my dodgy knee. The whole daft business. She cried and said yes. And the whole street came out. And that, marrying her, that's where it all had to come out into the open. Because to get married here, it turns out you need your papers in order. And that's when Rowena went quiet. She sat me down and told me there was something. When she was 19, she said, there'd been a boy, Dodong, and they'd married, young and stupid, and he'd left for Manila within the year, and she'd never seen him since. It wasn't real, she said. It was children playing at grown-ups. But on paper, she said, it was still there, and before we could marry, she'd need it annulled, because there's no divorce in this country, none, only annulment, and it's dear, and it's slow. I remember thinking, well, that's a wrinkle, but a wrinkle we can iron. Poor girl, married off as a child. Of course I'd sort it. The lawyer, whom I never actually met, only ever heard about, and somebody in Cebu, said it would run to about 600,000 pesos and take a year, maybe more. Filing fees, a psychologist's report, because apparently you have to prove the marriage was, what was the phrase, psychologically incapacitated from the start, the judge, the appearances, a commissioner. I sent it in pieces the way I sent everything, and it was always nearly there. That was the pattern, and I can see it clear as a wiring diagram now. It was always one more payment from being done. The judge had a backlog. The psychologist needed rescheduling. A document went missing at the court and had to be refiled, and the refiling had a fee. Once, a whole hearing got cancelled because of a typhoon, which, fair enough, there was a typhoon, but there was always something. Always a reason the finish line moved back exactly as far as the money moved forward. And every time I felt the doubt come up, I'd get a photo of Rowena looking tired and hopeful outside some office, or Angel would send me a voice note, and the doubt would go back down. Another fee, another delay, another document lost at the court in Cebu. £9,000 in the end, dripped into an annulment I never saw a single stamped page of. I asked Dave about it once, the Aussie, over a San Miguel down at his dive place. Told him the annulment was dragging. He went quiet for a bit, drawing rings on the table with the wet bottom of his bottle, and then he said, "Mate, has anyone ever actually shown you a case number? A stamped document. Anything with a court seal on it." And I sat there and realized I couldn't picture a single one. I'd seen photos of Rowena outside buildings. I'd seen a lawyer's name typed in a message. I'd never once held a piece of paper. And Dave looked at me, not unkind, and said, "I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying, an annulment leaves a paper trail a mile long, and you've not seen one page." I told him it was different, our situation, and I changed the subject, and I drove home telling myself he'd gone bitter, like they all go bitter. I was very good at explaining Dave away. He was the gauge, and I'd decided the gauge was broken, and I'd keep deciding that right up until a girl in a records office turned her screen a few degrees, and I saw the truth on it in green letters. And then, right in the middle of it, Tito Boy brought me the last big idea. The lot beside the house had come up for sale, and if we didn't buy it, someone would build right against our wall. And wouldn't it be better to have it, put the whole thing properly in order, get a lawyer to do the title, secure our future? 3.4 million pesos for the land and the lawyer and the title transfer. 48,000 pound. Every alarm I owned was going off by then. I know it was. There was a moment, I'll be truthful, sat at the little desk in the house with the online banking open, cursor hovering, where the whole of me went cold and clear for about 10 seconds and said, out loud nearly, Trevor, you do not know this lawyer? You have not seen this lot's title. You cannot own this land. Do not send this money. 10 seconds of the man I used to be, the man who checked the pressures, and then Rowena came in with a plate of mango, sliced up the way I liked it, and sat on the arm of the chair and said something soft about our future. And I clicked send. 48,000 pound, because a woman brought me a plate of fruit at the right moment. I've had a long time to think about how cheap I turned out to be at the end, and it wasn't cheap in the money. It was cheap in the 10 seconds. I had the truth for 10 seconds, and I traded it for a plate of mango and a soft voice. But I'd built the house, buried my savings in it, put my heart on that veranda. Dave's voice was in my head, whose name's it in? And I shoved it down. I sent the 48,000, and I waited for a title that never came. There was always a reason. The title office was slow. The old owner had to sort his own papers first. The lawyer needed another 20,000 for documentary stamps. I stopped being able to tell the difference between the reasons that were true and the reasons that were rope. And I'll tell you why. Because I didn't want to. A man who's put 200,000 pound into a place does not, cannot, let himself believe there's nothing there. He'll believe the sky is green first. I know, because I did. The wedding was set for the march, Ormoc, the church, the works. I'm an engineer. When something's meant to complete on a date, I want the paperwork lined up well ahead, not the night before. So I said to Rowena, let's get the license sorted early. Let's have it all in order. I'll come with you. And here's a thing you learn out there when you go to marry. You go to the local civil registrar, and to get your license, you both have to produce a document from the PSA, the statistics people, the national records. For me, single, it's easy. For her, it's a certificate called a CENIMAR, Certificate of No Marriage Record, a bit of paper that says, in the eyes of the state, this person is free to marry. The annulment was supposedly nearly done, so I thought, grand, the CENIMAR will show it. And off we went to the office in town, all official, me in a proper shirt. Rowena didn't want to come in, said she'd wait, the queue, the heat. I thought nothing of it. I sat on a plastic chair under a slow ceiling fan for 2 hours with my number on a scrap of paper. And when they finally called me up, the clerk, a young lass, very kind, went through Rowena's record on her screen. And her face changed, just slightly. And she turned the screen a bit, not to show me, just habit. And I saw it before she said it. It didn't say no marriage. It said married, subsisting, to one Rodrigo, surname I won't say, married in a church in Leyte, the year Rowena was 19. And under it, where an annulment would be recorded if there'd ever been one, there was nothing. No case, no filing, no decree, nothing. I said, "There must be a mistake. She's got an annulment going. It's nearly through." And the clerk looked at me the way you look at a man you're about to be sorry for. And she said, "Sir, there is no record of any annulment. And this marriage is still in effect. She cannot marry you. Not now. Not until this is ended by a court. And that has not been started." I don't remember the walk back to the car. I remember the heat. I remember a mercury drug, and a fella selling boiled eggs off a bike, balut they call it, and I remember thinking of all the daft things that I'd never been brave enough to try one. I remember getting in the car, where Rowena was sitting with her sunglasses on, and I remember she took one look at my face, and she started to cry before I'd said a word, before I'd said a single word. And that told me more than the paper had. We sat in that hot car in the car park with the engine off, and neither of us moved for a long time. I didn't rage. I keep telling you that, but it's important, because I think she was braced for rage, and I hadn't got any. What I had was this awful flat calm. The calm you get on a job when you finally find the fault, and it's worse than you feared, and there's no point shouting at a pipe. I said, "Quiet, just, he's alive then." And she nodded. I said, "And there's no annulment." And she shook her head. And I said, "Was any of it?" And I couldn't finish the sentence. I didn't know how to finish it. Was any of it, what? Real, true, mine? And she just cried harder. And out the window, a tricycle went past, with a whole family on it. Mum, Dad, 2 kids, and a sack of rice, all balanced somehow, all getting on with their lives. And I watched them go and thought, everyone here is just trying to stay on the bike. Even her. Especially her. It didn't make it hurt less. It just made it impossible to hate cleanly, which is its own kind of torture. The whole thing came apart over the next few days, in bits, the way a fridge doesn't die all at once. It just stops holding, and you keep opening the door, hoping. Rodrigo wasn't dead. There'd never been a fishing accident. He was alive, in Manila, working, and she was still his wife in every way the law cared about. The annulment I'd been paying into for a year, the 600,000 pesos of filing fees and psychologists' reports and lost documents, none of it had ever been real. There was no case number because there was no case. There was, I'm fairly sure now, no lawyer either, not the one I never met. I asked about the lot, the 48,000 pound, the title I'd been promised, and Tito Boy went very quiet, and Nay Elena started to cry, and it came out sideways, the way everything came out sideways in that family, that some of it had gone to family debts, and some of it, and this is the part that still turns my stomach, some of it had gone to Rodrigo, to keep him quiet, to keep him in Manila and away, because a legal husband who turns up while a foreigner's building a house is a problem, and money makes problems go and stay gone. I'd been paying, without knowing it, to keep another man out of the way of a marriage that was never, not for one single day, legally possible. And the house. My green concrete house with the veranda. Land in the mother's name. Not Rowena's, the mother's. So even the wife I couldn't legally have wouldn't have held it. My name was on nothing. Not the land, not the house, not the lot, not the piggery, not the shop. 260,000 pound of a Cornish life, and there was not 1 square inch of the Philippines that was mine. Rowena did what the guidebooks say they do, though I hate reducing her to that. She cried, and she begged. She said she loved me, that Dodong had abandoned her, that in her heart she was free, that she'd meant to fix it, and the money was never enough, and she was frightened I'd leave if I knew. And here's the thing that's kept me up more nights than the money. I think some of that was true. I don't think it was all a cold performance. I think a frightened poor woman with a daughter and a legal husband she couldn't shake did love me. Some, and use me entirely, and never once could see the join between the two. That's worse, somehow. A pure scam you can hate clean. This I couldn't. I didn't shout. I'm not a shouter. I went very quiet, which anyone who knows me will tell you is worse. I sat on that veranda one last evening with a warm San Miguel, and I listened to the karaoke and the roosters, and in the morning I packed my one bag, and Jomar, decent Jomar, drove me to the port on the motorbike I'd bought him, and neither of us said anything the whole way. Rowena stood at the gate. I didn't look back. I'd done all my looking. Too late, and at the wrong things. I've done the sums. Of course I have. I'm a man who measures things, and when I finally sat down at a laptop in a rented flat in Truro and did it proper, it came to this. The flights and the gifts and those first golden visits, about £9,000. The monthly 28,000 pesos a month across the best part of 2 years. Another 9. The medical, the strokes, and the collarbone, near enough 8. The house on her mother's land, 50. The shop and the piggery, 10. The annulment that never existed, 9. The furnishings, and the fridge, and the bike, and the endless fiestas, and the G-cash I stopped counting, 22. And the lot, and the lawyer I never met, and the title that never came, 48. £165,000. About 210,000 in your American money, since that's how these things get talked about online, some fella narrating your ruin in dollars. £165,000, and I recovered not a penny of it. The land's in her mother's name. The wife was never a wife. The piggery, I heard later, the pigs died of something in the first wet season, and the pens sit empty. The shop folded inside the year. I'd started with 260. Between what I gave them and what it cost me just to live out there for near 3 years, the flights back and forth, the doctors, my own daft generosity, I came home to about £50,000 and a state pension of $900 a month. 67 years old now, in a rented flat, a fridge humming in the corner, back where I started, only lighter. Much lighter. And here's the thing I most want to say, because I know how these stories are supposed to end, with the bitter old man cursing the lot of them. I won't do it. I can't. Because it wouldn't be true, and it wouldn't be fair. They were poor in a way I'd never seen poor before I went. That utang na loob, that pull of family, it's real. It's not a trick they invented for me. They live inside it, whether a Kano turns up or not. Rowena did wrong by me, grievous wrong, and I've no doubt she also lay awake with it. Both true. Poverty isn't malice. Desperation isn't the same as cruelty, even when it costs you everything. I think of Angel, that clever girl with her nursing books, and I hope to God she got out from under all of it. And I don't send a penny, and I never will again, but I hope. The lesson, if you want one off a foolish old man, it's not, don't love. I'd not tell anyone that. It's that I trusted the feeling over the reading, and I knew better. I've known better for 40 years. In my trade, you check the paperwork before you fire the system up. You test the joints before you trust the whole line to one of them. You find out, with a bit of paper from the proper office, whether a person is who the story says they are before you build your life on it, not after. The state had the truth about Rowena sitting in a database the whole time, a certificate any man could pull for a few £100, and I could have had it in week 1, and I didn't ask, because asking felt like an insult to love. Ask anyway. Love can take the question. It's the thing that can't take the question you want to run from. Coming home was the strangest part. 1-500 sold the house to go and build a life, so there was no house to come home to. I rent a one-bed flat in Truro now, above a charity shop, and it's fine, it's warm enough, and I go to the allotment still, and Gordon doesn't say I told you so, which is decent of him, because he never did tell me so. Nobody did except an Australian I decided was bitter. My brother came down from Plymouth when he heard, and we sat in the flat, and he didn't lecture me either, just made the tea and said, "Well, you're not the first daft old man, and you'll not be the last," and somehow that helped more than sympathy would have. I've had to be careful with money in a way I never was before. £50,000 and £900 a month sounds like nothing to some and a fortune to others, and it's neither. It's just enough to be all right if I don't do anything stupid again, and I've rather used up my allowance of stupid. The grief of it doubled up on the grief I already had. That's the thing nobody tells you either. I'd lost Susan, and then I went and built a whole second loss on top of the first, a second family, a second future, and lost that too. And some nights I can't tell the two aches apart, which is unfair to Susan, who never cost me a thing but the love of her. I think about Angel more than about Rowena, if I'm honest. That clever girl and her nursing books and her 93s. Whatever her mother did, that child did nothing. And I hope she got out, and I hope she qualified, and I hope she's in some hospital in Cebu right now being kind to some frightened old person. And no, I don't send anything. I can't. I mustn't. But I light a candle for her sometimes at the church, which would surprise anyone who knew me before all this. A Cornish engineer lighting candles. I still stand in the kitchen sometimes and listen to the fridge. It's a comfort now, oddly. It's the one thing in my life that does exactly what it says it will, at exactly the pressure it promises. Every time. Susan would have laughed at me. She'd have seen right through the whole thing in about a fortnight, and told me so, and I'd not have listened to her either. That's the joke of it. Careful all my life about everything that didn't matter. That's Trevor's story. And if you've been with this channel a while, you'll know we don't tie these off with a villain, because the truth is nearly always harder than a villain. There was no gang of masterminds here. There was a lonely, decent man who was very good at trusting instruments and very bad at trusting the one thing the instruments were telling him. And on the other side, poverty and family obligation that's genuine even when it's ruinous, and a woman tangled in a marriage her own country gave her no legal way out of, doing wrong while half believing she was doing love. Hold both. That's the only honest way to look at it. If there's one thing to carry out of this, it's the smallest, cheapest thing in the whole story. The certificate. A few hundred pesos, and a morning in a plastic chair, and it would have told him everything at the start, when it could still have saved him. The paperwork isn't the enemy of the heart. It's how you protect the heart from the story you're telling yourself. Thank you for sitting with us. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from, and if Trevor's story landed somewhere, share it. Because there's someone out there right now at their kitchen table, 10,000 miles from a barangay they've never seen, about to send the first small amount. Like, subscribe and look after each other. This has been Inside the Philippines.